Chapter 219. You're looking at me, right? The face that looked like a strange bird outside the window curled into a sinister smile, as if something good had happened. It danced happily outside the window. You're looking at me. You're looking at me. You're looking at me. His head spun wildly around his neck in excitement. Through the window, he looked at Yuan Zhao hungrily and screamed, "You're looking at me!" Yuan Zhao seemed to be possessed by a nightmare. He was frozen in place. He couldn't move. Only his heart had finally sunk to the bottom of the valley. Outside the window, the slender figure that was half man, half bird screamed excitedly. It suddenly closed its body and threw itself into the window. Then it exploded into a mass of blood in the air, from between a large mouth that suddenly appeared. Bang! Then, crunch, crunch, crunch! The strange bird was chewed into mud between the curved horns on the face that was covered in age spots and scars. It was swallowed into a long neck that seemed to have no end. Finally, on the old face, the pair of eyes that were covered in white clouds turned around, causing Yuan Zhao to collapse to the ground. Hungry, still hungry. That voice seemed to have heard it somewhere before. The gloomy and cold face stared straight at Yuan Zhao's appearance, and the voice was hoarse. "Have a good sleep, guest, otherwise you will be eaten." Then the long neck and head slowly shrank back. It was impossible to see where it went. Only the pale and cold moonlight shone through the corner of the curtain, falling on Yuan Zhao's bloodless face. In the silence, the string of reason that was riddled with holes finally snapped. Yuan Zhao fell on his back and fainted on the spot. It had been a long time since he slept so well. It was rare to have a good dream. After Huaisher woke up, he found that his whole body was extremely relaxed, as if he had been reborn. Moreover, the wound on his chest had already healed. His chest had been pierced by a sniper rifle, but it healed overnight. Wasn't this too illogical? In addition to the vitality provided by the large amount of green plants and the emergency repair of the silver blood medicine, the dinner last night also played an important role. The quality was quite pure. It was just that Yuan Zhao's half-dead face looked exceptionally dejected. "What's with your gloomy face?" "It's a long story." Yuan Zhao looked as if he couldn't bear to look back on the past. He followed behind Huaisher dejectedly, but he didn't have the feeling of a Chinibu yesterday. After that, he made people feel a little more comfortable to get along with. By the time they finished washing up, breakfast was already prepared. A few exquisite side dishes were paired with the rice, and there was also a rather delicious miso soup. The old lady's culinary skills were not inferior to his. Huaisher was amazed. "When this old one was young, I was also a general of a banquet hall." When the old lady mentioned this, she immediately covered her mouth and laughed softly. "Yes, I'm old now. I can't be compared to back then." After the meal, Huaisher felt that it was time for him to leave. The old lady didn't say much. She just walked the two of them to the door, then took out an envelope from the entrance and handed it to them. "This is what Lena's father brought home last time. It should be useful for an outsider like you, but it's not safe here, so please be careful." Huaisher received it. After opening it, he found that there were two unfamiliar badges inside. It seemed to be a work certificate somewhere. Then he felt the mission panel vibrate, and a new mission suddenly appeared. Obtained relevant clues. The mission chain is activated. Current mission Road to Staff. Within 24 hours, go to Kitten Paradise, pass the interview, and become an official employee. Kitten Paradise. What is that place? It feels very déjà vu, but Huaisher couldn't tell. When he picked up the ticket, he vaguely felt a cold gaze looking at him. He raised the lawyer's letter and looked at it from afar. If there was a slight mistake, it would fall on him after giving one to Yuan Su. Huaisher expressed her gratitude to the old man. "These are all things that you don't need. Don't worry about it. The old lady smiled and handed over a paper bag. And this, it was prepared by Lena's child for you to use on the road. Please accept it. That child stayed up all night to prepare it for a long time. Inside the paper bag was a pink lunchbox, which looked quite cute. Under the lunchbox, there were actually several magazines. Huaishir touched it casually, and a message appeared on the system panel. Universal Magazine can be equipped on any gun. The number of bullets varies according to the caliber, and it will be replenished every 3 hours. It turned out to be a gold equipment. Huaishir was dumbfounded. She subconsciously raised her head and looked upstairs. Behind the window, the curtains were suddenly pulled shut, but they were trembling slightly in unease. After a long time, Huaishir withdrew his gaze and sighed. Thank Miss Lena for me, but I'm just an outsider. I know. The old lady interrupted him, and a smile appeared on her old face. What a handsome young man, and so considerate. If it was a few decades ago, this old lady would also be tempted. Thank you for being so gentle to my granddaughter. She took a step forward, tiptoed, and gently straightened Huaishir's collar and smoothed the wrinkles on his shoulders. Then she slowly retreated behind the door of the small courtyard, smiled, and bowed to say goodbye. Mr. Huaishir, I wish you a safe journey. The sky gradually brightened. Even though there was no sun or stars, a faint light still emerged from the city in the darkness, distinguishing between day and night. Under the faint morning light, the scene in front of him became illusory and fleeting. Those who dared to ignore the system's warning and wander around at night because of their skills were either directly destroyed by the horrifying scenes of 100 Ghosts' Night becoming delicious dishes at banquets, or being trampled on by the terrifying monsters that only appeared in urban legends in the corners of the city. Even the Ascended who found a place to stay had to endure the test and selection of the incarnate deities. In just one night, more than 2,000 contestants ushered in a mental breakdown after being trampled on. In the end, they became the monsters' delicacies. Tragic exits. Even the contestants from the major organizations that had been prepared for a long time suffered a lot of losses. However, in the editing of the director's room, between the various scenes of ghosts swallowing people alive, there was a mocking scene of a cowherd and a family of ghosts getting along harmoniously as if they were returning home. Not only was the audience dumbfounded, but even the viewing room in the special seats was filled with an indescribable awkward atmosphere. The deputy minister of the Jinling branch felt like his entire body was in a mess. What the F***ck is a ghost family. Who introduced this kind of genius that could even instantly conquer a woman with a split mouth? The Astronomy Society really picked up a ghost. Fortunately, it wasn't him who picked up the ghost. On the screen of the live broadcast, there was a scene of a reluctant parting. Big sister, drink. Big sister smokes. This is awesome. Go away. Big sister doesn't smoke. Big sister, come and take this. This is the honeydew melon I planted in the mountains. Big sister, I'll give you this. I got it from a little bug. On the screen, the originally majestic group of ghosts nodded their heads and bowed like grandchildren, surrounding a woman, asking about her well-being, and hurriedly handing over all kinds of good things. The woman just smiled and took one by one. Finally, she picked up a strange, small statue that looked like a doll made of plastic, wearing very little cloth, and had a pair of big 2D eyes. What is this? I think it's something that little bug calls a figurine. Green Ghost lowered his body and hurriedly replied, It's said to be a certificate to go to Autumn Leaf Plain. Big sister will definitely need it. Oh, really? Then I'll take it. The woman named Luo Xian smiled and put it in her cloth bag, tiptoed, and patted his head to show her gratitude. Green Ghost's whole body was paralyzed on the ground. He didn't dare to move, like a dog, making it easier for Big Sister to touch him. Then, everyone has to go back. I have to go too. She smiled and said goodbye to the ghosts in front of her, Have you all learned how to knit sweaters? When you go back, practice hard. Chapter 2:21. 1. 90,000. Raise. Stand up straight. In the hustle and bustle, more than a dozen salted fish zombies with a rotten smell were sitting in front of a few tables, smoking, scratching their feet, drinking beer, and playing mahjong. The atmosphere was foul and looked terrible. Seeing Weisher come in, some of them looked back. Ah, the new team leader is here? He looks very young. It's over. I'm afraid today's performance won't be good. Anyway, I don't get paid. Performance doesn't matter. Motherfasterskur, did you just steal my cards? Is this card yours? Do you think it will answer you if you call it? You really need to learn your lesson. Grandson, come on. Before they could even finish their greetings, the zombies started fighting with each other. You pull my neck off, I break your waist with a kick. Broken limbs and bones rolled all over the ground. Weischer's eyes almost fell out of their sockets when she saw this. Each of them really had a unique skill. These guys, were they specially here to be beaten up? They couldn't even be beaten to death. Anyway, this group of people still knew the rules. After the fight, one by one, they came to meet Weischer and told him their positions. They said that if there was anything he needed, he could just let them know. If he couldn't, he couldn't. In the corner, there were two zombies reading pornographic magazines and chatting with each other. There's a new pinball shop in Mitakawa. How about we go and have a look after work? No, Rico hasn't been feeling well these 2 days. I have to bring back 2 pounds of fresh meat. Is she pregnant again? Yeah, it's the third one. Congratulations, congratulations. Weischer almost doubted his life. What the F*** CK is pregnant. Brother, you're a zombie. The two of them, however, were chatting happily. Taro is 4 years old this year. Yeah, the fat zombie looked back at Weischer. Team leader, you haven't seen the photo of my family yet, right? As he spoke, he took out a photo of his wife and child from his pocket and showed it to him. I'm fat now. I wasn't like this when I was thin. Look, I'm smiling so happily. Weischer took a closer look and saw the couple holding 2 charcoal-like children in the photo. Oh no, these colleagues are not reliable at all. Weischer's head was about to explode. With such a group of teammates, how were they supposed to fight? He had read the regulations before he came. The ghost castle could support up to 4 visitors at a time. There was still half an hour before the park opened, which meant that once the park opened, Weischer would immediately become a 4-man dungeon boss waiting to be killed. Even a group of weakest ascenders would have at least 4 of them. If they weren't careful, they would be doomed. In the end, they had to deal with this group of trash. How was this working? They were more like gifting kids. Weischer sighed. In the end, he asked seriously, how do you usually send cough? How do you work? The zombie at the front raised his hand and answered, sit at the desk and wait for people to come in. Then go up and bite them. Try not to let them run away. They seemed to have a good working attitude. Weischer nodded and asked another question. What if they run away? Another zombie raised his hand. Then sit back and wait for the next one. Okay, are they all dogs? I'll think of a way. Weischer scratched his head and tried to think as he walked around the castle. In terms of atmosphere, it was still okay. Although the traps were a little old-fashioned, they were still barely usable. The various forks and fake doors were also done decently, making it worthy of being called a maze. But they couldn't stop people. Weischer walked around and came back. He looked at the salted zombies in the lounge and suddenly asked, can zombies get sick? HM? The zombies looked at each other in astonishment and shook their heads. They can't. After all, they're all dead. They haven't even caught a cold for so many years. That's good. Weischer's eyes suddenly lit up, looking at the dozen or so salted zombies smoking and playing cards It was like looking at a dozen or so nutritious petri dishes. After thinking for a moment, he casually picked up a metal cup about the size of a beer mug. Then he took out a knife and cut his hand. He watched as his faint green blood flowed into the cup. When it was about done, he applied some silver blood potion as a band-aid. It just so happened that he knocked down a lot of trees on the way here. He was a bit overnourished, so he treated it as blood donation. The cup full of blood, with an ominous aura, gently rippled in the cup. Under Weischer's reckless infusion of origin substances, it quickly changed. Countless strains that were hard to see with the naked, I crazily grew from it. Weischer was afraid that it wasn't enough. He rubbed 2 handfuls of ash and sprinkled it in, causing the liquid in the cup to instantly turn pitch black. Finally, he took out the spear of compassion and sprinkled a few dozen grams of dragon blood in it. With a whoosh, the blood in the entire cup instantly stirred, as if it was boiling and bubbling nonstop. "Drink. This is my happy water." Weischer picked up the cup and placed it in front of them. He revealed a smile. "Come, hurry up. Everyone has a sip. Drink it, and you'll be happy." Under Weischer's instigation, the zombies all poured this seemingly happy water into their stomachs. Then they instantly became happy. Oh, I feel power. So happy. This is the feeling of growth. I'm even more rotten. I have an extra head under the catalysis of the virus that was almost like an alchemy poison. The zombies were instantly dyed with a layer of green. They looked incomparably harmonious, and mushrooms grew out of their heads. In the damp and rotten shells, the mushrooms grew happily. Like dandelions, they quickly split and spread in all directions, instantly turning the zombies into poisonous corpses. According to Weischer's observations, it seemed that everyone's poison was different. Type A's had the origin smallpox, Type B's had the hell's flu, and Type O's had all kinds of strange things. It was as if they were farming, and mushrooms kept growing out of their heads. There was even a zombie that had sunflowers growing out of its head. In the short period of transformation, time had already flown by quickly. In the blink of an eye, the alarm sounded outside. In a few minutes, the tourists would enter the park, and the game was about to begin. "Okay, cheer up. It's time to go to work." Weischer urged the group of listless zombies to hurry up and get ready to work. "Do you still remember where your job is?" "I'm in the library." "I'm in the kitchen." "I'll go to the hall." "I'll go stroll around." One by one, the zombies slowly dragged their feet, weakly walking into the depths of the castle. In the end, there was only one skinny old zombie left sitting on the chair in the lounge. Among all the zombies, he was the most rotten. His flesh was almost all falling off. He looked old and clumsy. Rather than calling him a zombie, it was better to call him a skeleton. He simply fell apart with a touch. To come to work at this level, he was simply diligent and loved his job. Weischer looked at him with reverence and admiration and asked, "What are you responsible for?" The old zombie raised his head and stiffly showed a flattering smile. He raised the 80-year-old newspaper in his hand and said, "Read newspaper, okay?" Weischer's eyes twitched. How could there be office bullying between zombies? Black-hearted capitalists are really scary. Speaking of which, the old man was already so old. Why was he still standing at his job? Did he have a job? Reading the newspaper every day must be very boring. He sighed and pointed to the table. "Then you stay here." "Someone came in. What should I do?" Weischer looked at him for a long time. Although he looked scary, he didn't look like he could fight very well. He was afraid that if he rushed up and was kicked, he would fall apart on the spot. At that time, the contestants would broadcast beating up the old man. It would be a tragedy. It wouldn't be harmonious. Then you can play mahjong with them. Weischer thought for a moment and brought a set of mahjong over. Regardless of whether it was useful or not, it could be used as a diversion tactic for the time being, in order to set off the atmosphere. He also stuffed the old humidifier in the room under the old zombies, but put a few handfuls of ashes, and after plugging it in, curling gray smoke slowly rose from the old zombie's mouth. At first glance, it looked like it was ascending to the sky. In the gloomy horror, it was full of the aura of a boss. Complete the job. Huaishir clapped his hands, listened to the gradually urgent alarm outside the castle, waved his hand, and turned down the power switch in the lounge. In an instant, darkness came and swallowed everything. Only the gate of the castle opened with a bang. Amidst the moaning of the zombies, the ghost castle officially opened. In the next moment, countless figures descended from the sky. Resurrection mission. Clear the kitten paradise within 8 hours. Completion reward. Restore the qualification to participate. Please explore the rest of the rewards yourself. In an instant, thousands of sublimators who had fallen into a nightmare woke up screaming and found themselves standing on the square. The contestants who had been eliminated on the first day were pulled into this paradise specially prepared for the resurrection game and became one of the countless tourists. Then countless information poured into their consciousness from the system panel, a second chance, and a better opportunity. Whether it was for this group of losers or the contestants who hosted the theme park project, there was no doubt that this was a challenge worth gambling everything on. Unlike the cannon fodder, who rushed to the front and rushed into any project, the challengers who had a brain basically stayed in place and took the time to read the thick project introduction book in their hands. They began to carefully screen the projects they wanted to choose. In the book, it contained a brief introduction of all the rides in the kitten paradise. According to the difficulty of the attractions, the conditions required to clear the park were also different. Some high-difficulty attractions only required 1 to clear, while some attractions marked as low-difficulty threats often required 4 or 5 to clear before they could accumulate enough progress to clear the park. Some daring challengers threw out the only 3 quick challenge tickets in their hands and directly skipped the contestants in front of them. They locked onto the most difficult projects such as Thunder Mountain, Earth's Core Pit, Death Roller Coaster, and so on, intending to reduce the risk and clear the game in one go. After all, they only had 1 life. No matter how low the threat level of the project was, there was a possibility of failure in the face of the host who had the geographical advantage. It was far better to finish it in one go. When someone saw the small line of words at the end of the introduction book, their eyes instantly lit up. After killing the host, not only could they obtain the qualification to participate, but they could also inherit the host's progress and all the equipment. Soon, after various calculations and trade-offs, the challengers embarked on the path they chose, either full of confidence or full of uneasiness. As the boiling crowd rushed in all directions, the kitten paradise was like a bloody meat grinder, slowly starting to move. Their hands and hearts were secretly on guard against the surrounding shadows, and they were advancing step by step. Nothing, just a drop of water. Li Unzhong shook his head indifferently. He felt that his breathing was obstructed, so he coughed and spat a mouthful of phlegm. He was too hot. Drip, drip, drip. Water dripped from the withered branches and withered leaves into the messy hall. And Yongshun was not careful with his feet, and he triggered a trap. He was caught by a hidden arrow and ended up in a sorry state. While they were not paying attention, the floor suddenly opened, and a zombie jumped out. It suddenly grabbed Park Ji-cheng's leg and opened its mouth to bite him. Park Ji-cheng cried out in pain and lifted his leg to kick the zombie, sending it flying to the wall. The force was so great that the zombie that landed on the ground turned into a cloud of smoke and disappeared. Everyone, be careful. I'm afraid that these things are the products of this ancient castle. I'm afraid there's something strange inside. Chui Zaiching reminded them. They were all ascendants, and with the sacred mark, their physiques were already fixed. Naturally, they were not afraid of being bitten by zombies. On the other hand, Park Ji-chung was unlucky. He was so angry that he coughed even more violently. He did not know what the zombie was eating every day. Its mouth was full of grass seeds, and it messed up his wound and made it bleed nonstop. After being sent here, they had lost all the relics from the border, not to mention the silver blood potion. They could only tear off a few leaves to bandage their wounds. Sensing the mocking expressions of his companions, Park Ji-chung was so angry that he coughed again. "Okay, Ji-chung, don't worry." Chui Zaiching looked around. After walking through the corridor behind the hall, the layout of the entire ancient castle became strange. There were many forks, and he did not know where they led. According to the introduction book, as long as he found 3 generators in this ancient castle and fixed them, he could open the main door and easily pass through. But after seeing those zombies, his confidence soared. How could he be willing to return empty-handed after entering a treasure mountain? He was determined to take down the host here. It should be known that this rookie competition was a rare step for him to advance. One of the 3 giants in the group, the Golden Dew King, who held the Tianfu seal in the Xinluo family, seemed to have heard of something. He did not hesitate to send all the elites under his command into this hell and promised to reward them after they returned. If he could suppress Li Zhongxing here and prove his ability in the group, he, who had been stuck at the 3rd stage for a long time, might be able to break through to the 4th stage. While he was observing, he suddenly had an idea. He noticed that the darkness above his head moved slightly, revealing a trace of abnormality. Amidst the ear-piercing sound of the axe scraping against the ground, he passed through the secret passage and walked straight in their direction. In the same place, after the 3 of them realized that they had been poisoned, 2 of their subordinates had already begun to panic. However, Chui Zaiching's expression was as calm as Mount Tai. He just waved his hand and said, "Come here." He activated the origin substance and awakened the sacred mark. A faint red sun shone from the top of his head, continuously purifying the viruses and negative origin substances in his body. Fire hounds. This was the sacred mark of the sun that had been stolen from the origin code of the Silla mythology. Naturally, it had some of the divine might of the scorching sun. In an instant, the viruses that had invaded his body were all destroyed. However, immediately after, the expressions of the 3 of them became awkward. They could hear the sounds in each other's stomachs. Although the viruses and the infected had been purified, the firehounds could only kill the parts that had been infected by the negative origin substances. Due to the limitations of its ability, it could not simply evaporate and wipe them out. As the 3 of them quickly activated their sacred marks, these harmful parts were quickly expelled from their bodies. The simplest way was after a short silence. Director Chui opened his mouth and asked bitterly, "Is there a toilet nearby?" Due to the urgency of the situation, they could not care too much. In a barren place, they did not necessarily have to find a toilet to solve the problem, right? The other 2 could just find a random corner to solve the problem. However, as a leader, he could not do something so humiliating in front of his subordinates. Under the awkward gazes of his 2 subordinates, Chui Zaiching looked at a door beside him. After hesitating for a moment, he said, "You 2 stand guard outside the door. Be alert. You are not allowed to enter or go far." The 2 of them immediately agreed. Chui Zaiching pushed open the door and entered. After he closed the door and turned around, he suddenly frowned and looked suspiciously at the corner. Under a pile of rags and broken furniture, there seemed to be something hidden. But when he carefully approached and took a closer look, he couldn't help but suck in a breath of cold air. Hiss! What was that? It had a cute square outline and a dark golden light that seemed to be able to bring happiness to people. Wasn't that the treasure chest that he had missed? In an instant, ecstasy rose from his heart. He even forgot about the churning feeling in his stomach. He almost held his breath. It was unbelievable. Who would have thought that there was a dark gold treasure chest hidden in such a remote corner of the castle? This sudden surprise almost made him dance with joy, but in the midst of the chaos, he still maintained his self-control, afraid that it was a trap set by the host. After using various methods to test it, he finally confirmed that it was indeed a treasure chest without a doubt. He could not help but smile. As long as he could get this treasure, not only would it be more than enough to kill the host, but he would also be able to completely suppress Li Zhongxing. Promotion and wealth were just around the corner. With such a mood, he reached out and opened the treasure chest. Then he saw a white light rushing towards him. A heroic voice sounded out of nowhere. Wow, gold normal. Sure enough, it was a gold. Wait, what was gold? Just as he was stunned, he saw that from the treasure chest that suddenly disappeared, a young man holding a flashlight suddenly jumped up, raised his axe, and chopped. Then he did not know anything. Bang! Through the door, a dull sound came from inside the room, and Yongshun and Li Yunzai looked at each other in astonishment. Then they sighed. As expected of Director Cui, his voice was so powerful. Even if he used his main account, he would still be so powerful. However, for some reason, Director Cui's luck was so good this time that he did not come out for a long time. The two of them waited for a long time. They were so anxious that they could not hold it in anymore. After looking at each other and confirming that everyone was about to shit, they decided to play rock, paper, scissors to decide who would go to the corner to relieve themselves. In the end, Li Yunzai was one step ahead of Yongshun. He put down the pale-faced Yongshun and proudly ran to the corner to relieve himself. After waiting for a long time, Yongshun could not wait any longer. He shouted at Li Yunzai, "Hey, are you done? Damn it! Why are you in such a hurry? Wait a little longer." Li Yunzai cheered up. His face was red. But then he heard a faint sound, which seemed to be coming from under the floor. Before he could react, he heard a familiar roar. "I want to eat a hot dog." Then, with a hoarse shout, a figure covered in curry sauce jumped out from under the broken floor. It was Park Ji-chung, who had been left behind by them and was being ravaged by the corpses. Now that he had become a zombie, Park Ji-chung was filled with almost eternal hunger. He opened his mouth and bit the meat in front of him, chewing it fiercely. Li Yunzai screamed in pain as his vital part was attacked. He struggled to ask his teammates for help, but Yongshun saw more than a dozen zombies crawling out from under the floor. He was scared out of his wits. He frantically knocked on the door behind him. "Director Cui, Director Cui." In the panic, he even forgot to call him Big Brother. The next moment, with a loud bang, the door was cut open by the axe blade. Then a ferocious eye appeared from the gap, staring at Yongshun's pale face and grinning. "Why are you looking for him?" Huaishir said. "He said he's not here," being looked at by the abyss like eye. He felt as if endless madness and pain were spreading from it. And Yongshun was stunned on the spot. He could not help but scream, and immediately ran away. Huaishir was stunned on the spot. "Too weak. Big Brother, you're at least a second stage ascendant. How can you be so useless? I haven't even finished my horror movie scene, and you're already running away. Do you think I don't care about my reputation?" When he was thinking about this, he did not think about the fact that he had completely covered the whole castle with various plants, and the density of the aura of fear was still increasing. Relying on the almost endless gloomy aura here, The fog formed by the calamity ash was constantly spreading, covering an inch of land, and had already joined in the carnival of the virus. First, he was splashed by Park Ji-sung's curry noodles. Then he watched helplessly as his teammate was eaten by someone else's hot dog. And finally he found out that the backbone of the team had been silently taken down. Now, and Yong-shun had completely fallen into panic. He screamed and ran all the way, completely unaware of where he was. He only heard the constant moans of the zombies behind him until he finally saw a door. In an instant, he was almost moved to tears. He rushed over, opened the door, and shut the nightmare behind him outside. And Yong-shun panted violently, almost without strength. He leaned against the door and slowly slid to the ground. Then he saw the generator next to him. Generator. As long as the 3 generators were repaired, he could escape from here. His eyes lit up, and he found a glimmer of hope in despair. Then he finally noticed the strange figure behind him. In the darkness, behind the dust-covered table, a faint black aura rose into the sky, enveloping the strange and old evil spirit. It was as if it was reading some evil book or demonic book, focused and serious. Sensing his presence, it slowly raised its head, and the rotten face grinned, revealing a bloodthirsty smile. It was like the last straw that broke the camel's back. And Yong-shun stammered, wanting to say something, but in the end, he could only make a squeaking sound and pass out. Before he fainted, a last desperate thought emerged in his mind. In the future, in this life, I'll never eat curry again. Chapter 224. It was as if he had a nightmare. Chui Zicheng dreamt that he opened a dark gold treasure chest. For bright flashlights shone from the treasure chest in a flash, and then 4 figures jumped out. One held a large shield with red hair, one had purple hair and held a sword, one had silver hair and pouted. And the last one held a crossbow and shouted at him. 4 dazzling white flashlights swayed back and forth in front of him, causing him to have seizures. He was so dizzy that he didn't know where he was. He could only cry out, "Why don't I have a single high talent?" This nightmare lasted for an unknown amount of time. Finally, a dark gold light shone from the treasure chest. A blurry figure rose from the light, holding an axe in his hand, and grinned at him. "Swordsman Pagoda, you can't rest yet." He screamed and finally woke up from the nightmare. When he opened his eyes, he found himself hanging upside down in the hall of the castle. In front of him were 17 or 18 zombies and his 3 subordinates. His family was standing in a neat row. When the group of zombies looked at him, they had a strange smile on their faces. It was as if they didn't want this to happen and wanted to feed him. "Yo, you're awake?" Huaishi's smiling face slowly rose in front of him, and he picked up the mirror in his hand. The sex change operation was very successful. From today onwards, you can also draw 2 clean eyeliner and steal men from little bitches. The person in the mirror had a thin layer of powder on his face. It could be said that he had a picturesque face, but the beard on his face was not shaved clean. He looked like a demon and didn't look like a good person. Chui Zicheng was stunned for a long time. He subconsciously raised his head to look at his lower body. After seeing that both of his brothers were intact, he breathed a sigh of relief. He reacted and glared at Huaishi. You're that bastard from the looming hall. What a nasty word, old Chui. To think that I was prepared to warmly welcome you. Huaishi curled his lips and pointed behind him. What do you think of my lineup? Do you want to join us? It's good that we're a family. He really wanted to turn Chui Zicheng into a zombie as well. Even if he would immediately leave after turning into a zombie, even if the remaining body would lose its soul and lose its stigmata, the physique of a level 3 ascendant was still there. Why wouldn't he accept an underling who delivered himself to his doorstep? However, Chui Ziqing's stigmata was a firehound of the Xinlua lineage. It was a natural counter to Huaishir's dark origin substance. If he didn't cooperate, Huaishir could easily kill him, but he wouldn't be able to obtain his body. Knowing what Huaishir was planning, Chui Ziqing shouted angrily and became even angrier. "Dream on, you scum of the human world who is worse than a dog. No matter what you do, I won't give in." Knowing that he would not have a good ending if he fell into the hands of this pervert from Yingzhou, Chui Ziqing cursed angrily for a moment, saying that he was an ugly person who sold sex to a male prostitute, a shameless rat, a treacherous and evil lunatic, and so on. It was quite interesting for Xinlua TV station. Seeing that this good man refused to submit, Huaishir had no other choice. "Forget it. I didn't want to use this move in the first place." As he said that, Huaishir raised his hand and stuffed a handful of ash into Chui Ziqing's mouth. Then he waved his hand and snapped his fingers. Pa! Then there was the sound of cloth tearing. The 20 or so zombies instantly tore off their clothes and turned into a group of big boss zombies wearing very little cloth. In the corner, the old man who was reading the newspaper pulled the switch, and the lights dimmed. The laser ball hanging in the center of the castle started to rotate under the colorful light. Countless white fog of ash rose up, and for a moment, the entire ghost castle looked like a disco. Music! Huaishir stood up and stood in the middle of the zombies. He stretched his body and smiled uneasily. "Today, I'll let you see the traditional skills of our orchard gym." The next moment, as the young man waved his hand, impassioned music began to play. Dozens of zombies raised their hands in unison, pressed their faces, twisted their bodies, and sang in unison. Director Chui's eyes widened. A chill ran down his spine. On the screen in the venue, the fierce war had come to an end. It could be called a showdown of black technology. Under the collision of scholars and armies on both sides, modern steel torrents surged. All kinds of guns and short guns released a torrential rain, turning everything into wreckage. As the commander of the weaker side saw the opportunity to retreat, the war came to an abrupt end. In the live broadcast room, Diding smiled slightly. "It seems that the battle at Sensoji has come to an end for the time being. I really feel sorry for the Tengu team of Ren Xiaotong. They were one step behind and lost an important contract to Sodom Group. At the same time, congratulations to Sodom Group for becoming the second participant organization after the Social Security Bureau to win the contract. In the current second phase of the mission, there were a total of 14 critical places for the participants to attack, representing 14 key items. Different from the various airdrop items that could only be set up in the Xinhua framework, these 14 key border relics were treasures that were contained, produced, or forged in Yamatai. Once obtained, as long as they stayed until the end of the competition, even the competition committee would not ask about it. Once obtained, it would belong to the participants. The scene was captured very vividly conveying his incompetent and furious appearance to the audience. The entire arena was instantly filled with a joyous atmosphere. Now, in the second stage of the mission, out of the 14 key items, 2 of the 3 army contracts have already been obtained by the participants. Let us see what kind of exciting performance the participants of Kitten Paradise have. In the live broadcast room, the Harkin looked at the old man's appearance with a smile. He waved his hand and turned the camera around. Suddenly, the dozens of split-screen cameras on the screen showed the amusement park covered in blood and wails. Amidst the melodies of the children's songs from the loudspeakers in the amusement park, the participants who intended to regain their qualifications to participate in the competition continued to rush into the various projects. Unfortunately, there were many people who rushed in, but less than 10% of them were able to rush out. And those who were able to kill the host and inherit the progress of the mission were even rarer. The seemingly warm amusement park had now become a meat grinder, swallowing blood and death, continuously bringing more joy to the audience and the host. On the big screen of the amusement park, the top 5 projects of the mission completion progress had already been displayed. The one in the lead was the Level 3 sublimator from the Gurkha lineage, Delavea, who was hosting the death roller coaster. Behind him, the sublimator from Siam, Chalk, was hot on his heels. There were already 80 to 90 failed challengers on both sides, and the rise was astonishing. Unexpectedly, these projects turned out to be of medium or slightly lower difficulty in the evaluation. And for the projects with the highest difficulty, because there were too few challengers, it was difficult to accumulate any completion rate in a short period of time. This made the hosts, who were greedy for safety, regret. At the same time, just as Dieting was introducing, the image on the big screen suddenly changed. The Death Roller Coaster Project, which was originally at the forefront, suddenly shook, and the name of the host changed instantly. From the original Delavea, it changed to India. In the close-up on the big screen, the scene of the host being instantly beheaded by the challenger was broadcasted. Right next to the corpse was a man wearing a red turban on his head with a long black beard and a scimitar in his hand. He was a Sikh warrior. Before the audience had time to marvel, the big screen changed again in an instant. The progress of a project that was originally outside the rankings suddenly soared. After breaking into the range of the top 3, it surpassed the original second and first place and occupied the top spot. Huge World. Host, Amber in the Dark. Chapter 225. Huge World. Host, Seeing Amber. All of a sudden, all the representatives on the VIP seats turned around in shock and looked at the representative of the looming hall. Their expressions were filled with surprise and admiration. They thought that the looming hall had shocked the world with a single brilliant feat. They had actually taken the initiative in the battle for the last army contract. Damn it, I'm not. Why do you have to push all the blame to us? My husband was so angry that his face turned red. He opened his mouth several times to speak, but in the end, he closed his mouth bitterly. He knew that no one would listen to him, even if he explained. Who would believe that a Chinese from Seeing Amber would go to the Social Security Bureau? Dirty linen should not be aired in public. It would be more embarrassing if he said it, so it was better not to say it. Look at the old man of Looming Hall. He is so happy. You quickly send 2 bottles of quick-acting heart pills over. The Harkin kindly instructed as it scrutinized the battle footage that was sent over from the director's room. Then it clicked its tongue and sighed. The battle is indeed in full swing. Even the host, who is in the lead, may die in the hands of the challengers. What do you think, Madame Baizet? As he said, he gave a look to Baizet, who was quietly eating snacks next to him, indicating to her, "If you dare to say that again, I will kill myself in front of you." Seeing the camera move over, Baizet hurriedly wiped the potato chip crumbs from the corner of her mouth and chewed the snacks in her mouth. She looked confused. "What are you asking?" Di Ting held back a mouthful of old blood and squeezed out a smile. "May I ask our live guest, Miss Baizet, what do you think of the current Kitten Paradise competition?" He emphasized the word live guest, indicating to her to stop eating and come to work quickly. "Don't let me talk awkwardly alone." The distracted guest finally reacted. She lowered her head and looked at the screen. She nodded seriously. "It's pretty good. Friendship comes first. Competition comes second." As soon as the voice fell, the contestants' blood sprayed all over the screen and couldn't be wiped off. Friendship was no longer. Baizet coughed and said solemnly, "I think the situation is very delicate. You look like this is going to win, but in fact, it is not necessarily so. But if you want to say who can win, in fact, he is unlikely to have a chance." Right from the start, she directly said more than 10 points. She analyzed from the beginning to the end as if she could still analyze from the back to the end. But the problem was, after saying so much, there wasn't a single solid point. The smile on the Harkin's face was about to disappear as it quickly sent a message to the outside. "Brother, can you quickly change the guest for me?" Very soon, Xian Niao's reply arrived. "We don't have enough manpower. Besides, isn't this pretty good? Damn, it's pretty good." The Harkin was on the verge of breaking down. "In short, I think," Bai Zhe thought for a moment and finally concluded, "the lucky one will definitely win." "Isn't this exactly the same as what you said yesterday? You can say that you're lucky, but can't you use another word?" Cough, cough. The Harkin finally asked the question that he had been regretting for the past 3 hours. For example, Bai Zhe lowered his head and looked at the list of contestants in front of him. His eyes lit up. "I think he's not bad." He reached out and pointed at Huaishir. Exactly the same as yesterday. The Harkin felt like it was about to go mad. "Sister, are you a shill hired by the Astronomy Society?" But yesterday it was indeed, as Bai Zhe had said. Huaishir had actually managed to obtain the dark gold grade equipment in the midst of a fierce competition. The Harkin couldn't refute that. Instead, he looked down, and his face twitched uncontrollably. It had been almost an hour since the start of the event. Ghost's Castle. Huaishir. The final completion rate was a pitiful 3. In other words, this guy hasn't even finished off the first wave of challengers after so long. Isn't this a little too much? Or could it be that he's just slacking off? But since Bai Zhe had said so, come, let's see what the outstanding performance of Huaishir from yesterday will be like today. He waved his hand and gestured for the director's room to turn the camera around. Unfortunately, a head popped out from the director's room and began to shoot him meaningful glances. The Harkin looked up and glared at him. "Just turn around when I tell you to. Do you think I'll be scared?" "All right, since you've already made up your mind," the assistant director sighed and told the cameraman to listen to his instructions. Therefore, in an instant, the scene on the big screen changed. Before they could see clearly what was happening, they heard a burst of impassioned music. "Hey, young man!" On the special seats, eldest cousin directly spat out a mouthful of water. F***CK. It can't be. Old Luo even taught you this? Then, the colorful laser light that blinded the eyes of all the audience burst out from the darkness, following the screams and cheers of the zombies, for clouds of gray fog slowly rose. Following the rhythm of dong, chow, 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 more than a dozen naked zombies wearing only gym clothes jumped out of the smoke. Their bodies were smeared with oil from who knows where, showing off their muscles, chest hair, and big bellies. They moved their bodies to the music, singing and dancing, and sang in unison, "Young men!" There's no need to feel down. "Hey, young man, you don't have to be depressed. There is a place you can go. When you are poor, you can live there. You will find that you will be incomparably happy. It's fun to stay at YMCA. Along with the loud music, more than a dozen zombies either did backflips, stretched their hips, or twisted their bodies randomly, singing and dancing around Director Chui, who was already foaming at the mouth. An indescribable aura of stupidity and a strange atmosphere that made all the viewers' hair stand on end mixed together. Through the big screen, all the viewers were hit in the face. Di Ting was stunned in place. What the hell is this? What's going on? How did you do it? The 3 questions of life suddenly squeezed into the mind, and then turned into countless black question marks rising from the forehead. In the end, it became a question from the heart. "Brother, where did you learn the ability to sing and dance without saying a word? Are you a spy sent by the Dongsha pedigree, or the Indian pedigree?" In this indescribable mental pollution, only Chui Ziqing's desperate cries could be heard. The representative of the Seven Stars group in the special seats had a livid face and joined the incompetent and furious team. He glared at the husband who was trembling and eating the heart-relieving pill. The looming house has gone too far. Lao Qing's body swayed and almost fainted on the spot. He was so angry that he was about to cry. I didn't. This person is not from our looming hall. That sad and indignant look made the representative of the Seven Stars group stunned and couldn't help but believe a little. Could it be that they really didn't do it? And in this crazy live broadcast, all the viewers saw the gate of the castle open again, and a group of ferocious ascendants rushed in with long guns and short cannons. Don't be afraid. Go. The leader encouraged his teammates. It's just an evil spirit. Hiss. As soon as he looked up, he saw dozens of dancing demonic shadows and Cui Ziqing, who was hanging in the air screaming in pain in the smoke. In the wonderful melody of the dynamic Huai Shi playing online, the zombies twisted their bodies happily, and the flowers and plants on top of their heads kept throwing green non-calorie and low-calorie health drinks around. It looked very environmentally friendly. In an instant, everyone was stunned on the spot, not knowing what was going on. They only felt the aura of the powerhouses coming at them like raging waves, as if it was crushing everything and obliterating the Tao, so they didn't dare to move anymore. And in their team, there was a burly man with naked chest hair who suddenly blushed and had a nosebleed on his face. Oh my God, the evil spirit castle is so exciting. Go, go. Seeing that another contestant had fallen into the hands of this Ingzhou lunatic, Cui Ziqing screamed in despair. There are all perverts here. Run, just as he screamed in despair. More than a dozen zombies wriggled strangely, singing and dancing around him. Hey, young man, how happy it is to stay in YMCA. How happy it is. He was only stunned for a moment, and then under an instinctive sense of crisis, the leader of the ascendants put away his originally confident look, cupped his hands, and retreated. Sorry to disturb. Goodbye. They turned around and left. But with a loud bang, the gate of the castle behind the challenger closed. How dare you? Huai Shi, who was a guest DJ, raised his head and stared at the new challengers. You want to leave after offending our looming hall? Who was the one who shouted to charge just now? He raised his axe and shouted angrily in Ingzhou language. If you don't want to charge, then don't you want our looming hall's face? Damn it, you still don't admit it. In the venue, the representative of the Seven Stars group was furious again. He glared at the old man next to him, as if he wanted to kill him. You Ingzhou people are too shameless. You're already so perverted, and you still dare to say that you don't know martial arts. In a daze, the old man didn't say anything. He just swallowed a mouthful of blood into his stomach with the quick-acting, heart-relieving pill. Fine, whatever you say, he was already disheartened. At the same time, in this endless torture, Cui Ziqing closed his eyes in despair. He finally gave up thinking and was swallowed by the endless ashes and plagues. Soon, he joined the singing and dancing that was brimming with happiness and idiocy. Ghost Castle, Huai Shi, progress. 8. Immediately afterward, under the numb gaze of countless audiences, the progress of the Ghost Castle began to soar rapidly. 12, 16, 20. After digesting the first wave of challengers, the number of zombies under Huai Shi's command began to skyrocket. However, limited by the Ghost Castle itself, there could only be, at most, 4 challengers at a time. It couldn't be like a death roller coaster where 70 or 80 challengers came in at once. The progress of the mission itself was still slow, until Huai Shi thought for a while, calmly analyzed, and then he let a challenger out. Leaning against the door, he watched the ascendant, who finally cleared the level after being bitten by zombies, walk away. Huai Shi began to rub his little hands in anticipation. Half an hour later, the plague from the abyss spread from the square of the kitten paradise. Chapter 226. F asterisk CK the talent. F asterisk CK the unpolished jade. F asterisk CK the cat litter shovel. In the stench of countless mosquitoes and flies, Yuan Zhao struggled to use the grass to shovel out an indescribable object the size of a coal ball from the mountain of cat litter. He pinched his nose and threw it into the cart behind him. He was sweating profusely, just like an old farmer who worked in the fields. His face was ashen, smelly, really smelly. It was going to stink him to death. Did that bastard really think he was a cat just because he wore a doll? Not only did he poop so much, he even pooped such a big one. This was not a pile of cat litter. It was a poisonous mountain. Even a rat as big as a calf was poisoned to death in this damn place. Fortunately, that damn thing at least had some conscience and issued this matter as a task. Unlike other hosts, as long as Yuan Zhao worked hard to shovel this pile of cat litter before sunset, his task would be completed. It took some hard work, but there was no danger. He could get the task reward if he worked hard. The teenager spat, poked the fork into the things on the cart, grabbed the handle, and pushed the third cart of cat litter to the coffee shop operated by the Kitten Paradise. He didn't want to know what the coffee shop used to make coffee at all. When passing by the square, he lowered his head deeply and wished he could cover his face. In the curious eyes of the challengers, he just wanted to find a hole to hide in. At this time, if an acquaintance of the Social Security Bureau jumped out and asked, "Hey, Yuan Zhao, what are you doing?" Yuan Zhao would be able to welcome social death right away. Fortunately, the team of the Social Security Bureau was not very familiar with him, and not many people died. In this big hell, no one knew that he was shoveling cat litter in humiliation except for Huai Shi. Later, as long as he shut up Huai Shi, that pretty boy, he could firmly bury this dark history. Just like this pile of cat litter, it disappeared into the unknown darkness. Thinking of Huai Shi, that guy who was ridiculously lucky, his heart began to ache. He accidentally inhaled a mouthful of stench when he sighed. Suddenly, his vision turned dark, and he almost fainted from the stench. Before he could react, he had already accidentally bumped into the person in front of him. I'm sorry, Yuan, Zhao subconsciously apologized. Soon after, he saw that there was such a wide path in front of him, yet that person insisted on walking in front of him. His expression immediately became unhappy. How do you walk? Why don't you look ahead? That person was straightforward and didn't argue. After being hit by the cart, he immediately lay on the ground and vomited large mouthfuls of blood. Convulsing violently, he stared blankly, not understanding what had happened. It was as if he was drunk, and when he finally looked at Yuan Zhao, his expression became angry. "It's you." He raised his hand with great difficulty and pointed at Yuan Zhao. "Why you bumped into me?" "No, I'm not." Yuan Zhao jumped up in fright, subconsciously grabbing the manure fork and pointing it at the already bloodless, ferocious face. "Don't blackmail me." As he spoke, he looked at the people around him in a panic and grabbed a passerby who was passing by. "You have to be my witness. I just touched him, and he fell." Bang! The passerby he reached out to grab also fell to the ground with a thud. Then, like dominoes, the passers-by fell to the ground one after another in the huge square. For a moment, the sound of falling bodies could be heard incessantly. Almost all of them looked the same, not knowing what had happened to them. After falling to the ground, they began to vomit blood and convulse violently. Those who were slightly weaker stopped moving after a few flops, losing their temperature on the spot. Because they had already lost their qualifications to participate, they did not even drop a single gold coin. Yuan Zhao was about to go crazy. "I'm just shoveling cat litter. There's no reward for killing me, so why are there so many people trying to blackmail me?" The passers-by who were lucky enough to survive quickly cried out in alarm. attracting the attention of the people around them. There were also those with strong constitutions who did not die on the spot, but when they came to their senses, they cast their cold gazes at Yuan Zhao. After seeing the stinky cart beside him, they came to a realization. Everyone be careful. There's poison in the feces. Fierce expressions appeared on their faces, and a few of the ascendants who were hit rushed forward. Kill this little bastard. Don't come over. Yuan Zhao cried out in alarm. He subconsciously raised the manure fork and stabbed forward. Indeed, it was as he said. A cold light appeared first, followed by a foul stench. The manure fork stained with cat litter was incomparably sharp. With just one stab, it pierced through an ascendant who looked strong on the outside but was weak on the inside. He immediately stopped moving. Dead. Yuan Zhao stared blankly. And then doubts arose in his heart. Shouldn't a dead ascendant turn into light and disappear? Why would a corpse be left behind? Soon he knew why. On the fork, the ascendant who should have been dead suddenly raised his face. His bloodless face was ferocious, and only hunger was left. His sharp nails scratched at Yuan Zhao's face, futilely pulling at it in the air, wanting to be gluttonous. Around Yuan Zhao, the dozen or so ascendants who had fallen to the ground had all climbed up. Their white eyes looked around, and their hungry gazes were cast on the living people in the square. By the time Yuan Zhao reacted, he found himself surrounded by zombies. In the brief moment of silence, Yuan Zhao swallowed his saliva. Can you not hit my face? In the next moment, he was drowned by the tide of zombies. In just half an hour after being released, the virus had already passed its incubation period and started to act up. In the past half an hour, except for the one who had passed the test, all the others who had talked with the one who had passed the test, exchanged their intelligence and experiences with him, or decided to participate in the next project started to vomit blood violently. First, it was high fever, followed by the destruction of the immune system, the rapid necrosis of the internal organs. The gray matter of the brain had already become a hotbed for the virus, and in the end, they all turned into living corpses. This was completely outside of Weishur's expectations. Originally, he only had a flash of inspiration and wanted to try releasing a virus carrier, but he didn't expect it to have such a miraculous effect. After his careful selection, the virus that was injected with a large amount of source substance, and after a few rounds of transformation in the zombie body, it actually had some characteristics of the zombie virus. And in the entire system of the amusement park, it seemed that only the Ghost Castle had zombie-type staff. Once completely infected and transformed, they would be judged as a member of the Ghost Castle, and the ascendants killed would automatically be counted as Weishur's head. So in the blink of an eye, the Ghost Castle's turnover began to explode. In an instant, from the previous 20-something, it skyrocketed to more than 270. It almost increased by 10 times. On the ranking list, the Ghost Castle's ranking shot up like a rocket, directly pushing the first place of the Giant World Amber to second place. The Looming Hall is really amazing. In the special seats of the venue, the big cousin clapped enthusiastically and took the lead to congratulate. This time, the first and second place are both members of the Looming Hall. It seems that this army contract is already in the bag of the Looming Hall. Really amazing. The Social Security Bureau is ashamed, but now it seems that your lineage has a deeper foundation. So, the Seven Stars Group's representative looked at the old man with a fiercer gaze. The old man was already paralyzed on the chair, panting heavily, and couldn't even speak. He only raised a trembling finger and pointed at the big cousin's face. You. Someone come quickly. The big cousin shouted with concern. Look, the old man is so happy. Quickly send him to the emergency room for oxygen. Soon, 2 burly security guards ran over, hurriedly carried the old man, and ran to the infirmary. The old man was pulled by the security guards and couldn't break free. He could only stare at the big cousin, spit out a mouthful of blood, and disappeared from the special seats. In the broadcast room, Ting's expression was as if he had eaten shit, and he didn't know what to say. Only Baize calmly pointed at the ranking list and said, "Look, I told you he was very lucky." At this time, in the amusement park, Huaishir was happy for a while, but he immediately found that the number above his head didn't move. It was stuck at 207, and there wasn't an increase in people for the next few minutes. That's strange. Is the disease too severe? And the infection didn't catch up? Huaishir compared the strategy guide of Plague Incorporated on his phone, and he didn't understand what was going on. Then, he found that the number of zombies under the jurisdiction of the ghost castle began to rapidly decrease, and in an instant, there were only 50 zombies left outside. What's going on? You've crossed the line, kid. Kitten in a puppet costume appeared in front of him, and she reached out a hand from her big mouth, flicked the ash, and then retracted it. Just now, the host of a project was infected by your virus and died. Although I don't mind your performance being higher, I'm not the only administrator here. Be careful not to provoke those unreasonable Littleby asterisk cheese, and they'll kill you on the spot. There's nothing I can do. Okay, so it's a version update, and the plague halo was removed. Huaishir sighed. You patched it too fast. How am I going to increase my performance next? If this loophole wasn't patched, I'm afraid the one looking for you now wouldn't be me. Kitten glanced at the center of the square behind him, at the castle shrouded in dark clouds. A few cold eyes were cast from the castle in the center of the square, and coldly fell here with a hair-raising cruelty and ferocity. Then, they disappeared without a trace in front of the tattered kitten puppet costume. Just treat it as a change of request. Kitten said, I'm not asking you to draw me a colorful black, but if you're too reckless, I can't protect you. Give me some face. How about it? Okay. Huaishir nodded. He naturally knew that he couldn't go against the boss, but his eyes blinked at Kitten, waiting for her to continue. Courtesy demands reciprocity. I've already given you so much face. Big brother, you have to do something, right? Then it's settled. Kitten threw out the cigarette, but from her mouth, and stepped on it. As long as you die in Ghost Mansion, it'll be counted as your performance. You don't have to worry about other things. Thus, after this matter was settled, she didn't say anything more and left. Huaishir didn't even see how she disappeared. After a short pause, the second place that wasn't too far behind began to catch up, and the number of performance began to rise rapidly. He really didn't know what that woman, Hoopa, was doing. The speed was incredibly fast. In an instant, Huaishir's first place became precarious. Looking at the ranking on the system panel, Huaishir's mind raced. What Kitten meant before she left was only those who died in Ghost Mansion would be counted as his performance, right? He pinched the stubble on his chin and slowly raised his eyebrows. I can't release poison outside, but if I let the zombies outside drag the challengers in and kill them, that can't be considered a violation of the rules, right? Chapter 227. 10 minutes later, a blinding iron signboard appeared in the live broadcast and hung outside the ghost castle. Then, a second signboard, a third signboard, and a fourth signboard were hung up. Sexy zombie hot dance. Absolute thrill with no exit. Various health drinks free lucky draw. Are you lonely? Do you need someone to accompany you in this lonely hell? Asia's largest zombie chat center is online. Red, blue, and yellow lights constantly alternated on the signboard like a free light show. In an instant, they flashed crazily in the passionate singing, which was very eye-catching. Then, there were the words, Ghost Nightclub, that radiated with grand light. At the end, there was also a billboard that was bigger than the signboard, for fear that people would not be able to see it clearly. Ingzhou Looming Hall operates with integrity. In order to make so many signboards, Huaishur spent a lot of effort. Fortunately, these lamps were all made of metal, and he could do the rest with his mediocre alchemy skills. But he never thought that the lousy skill, illegal organization operation that he learned when he first read the record would come in handy here. Even if it was only level 4 or 5, with Huaishur's contemplation at this moment, countless wonderful inspirations kept emerging in his mind. In just half an hour, the entire gloomy and terrifying castle turned into a disco at the entrance of the village. With the preparation completed, Huaishur snapped his fingers, and countless zombies rushed out like wild dogs out of their cages, pouncing on the challengers who were standing outside and watching in shock. They hugged their arms enthusiastically, rubbing their arms with their lush chest hair, and squeezing out a sincere smile on their rotten and swollen faces. "Big brother, come and play." New store opening, all services, all fractures. Fierce male dancers crazy for your songs. They caught a person and pounced on him without any explanation. 2 zombies held down the hands, and 2 zombies held down the legs. They were dragged into the castle and stuffed into the lively and noisy hall. Under the passionate singing and dancing of the zombies and the warm hospitality of countless strains, there were no more challengers after 5 minutes. For a time, the stagnant performance quota began to rise rapidly again, causing the girl wearing the Prajna ghost mask in the huge world to raise her head in astonishment and then roar angrily. Then he made another note in the little notebook in his heart. "Snatching my head, snatching my performance. This grudge is absolutely irreconcilable. Sooner or later, I will help you correct your mistakes." Aya, Hupo's daughter, must be furious. Looking at the rapid increase in turnover, Huaishur tilted her head back and took a sip of the ice-cold, happy water. She was immersed in the joy of increasing sales. Sure enough, a horse wouldn't get fat without a windfall, and a man wouldn't get rich without grass at night. As long as this illegal organization was up and running, its performance began to rise. Not only the performance, even the proficiency of the skill, illegal organization operation began to skyrocket. In an instant, it increased by 2 levels and reached level 6. If this happened in the present, who knows how many years he would be sentenced to? He felt happier when he thought that he was in hell and there was no SIR to send him warmth. Hell is a good place. After drinking the happy water, he was stunned for a moment. He felt that something was wrong, but he couldn't tell what it was. When he secretly opened the Book of Destiny, he discovered that there were 3 additional buffs on his form on the title page. Wisdom and meditation. Due to certain reasons, your ability to make strategies and plans according to the situation has improved a little. Success in every endeavor. Due to certain reasons, your plan won't encounter too many obstacles. Happiness and suffering together. Due to certain reasons, your luck will improve, but the severity of failure will also increase. I'm shocked. What the hell is this? Huaishur was so scared that he jumped up. Also, what was the certain reasons? These 3 powerful buffs fell from the sky and scared him a little. It was simply inexplicable. It couldn't be that someone tapped on the screen and said that he was lucky and his luck improved, right? What the hell? Just by looking at the description, he knew that with these 3 buffs, even an African would be able to become a European king. When he saw that the duration of each buff was 20 minutes, his first reaction was to take out his phone, open the game, and start to draw cards crazily. Then he felt that he was blind. He threw all the stones that he had accumulated over the past few days. 3 10 points in a row, but there wasn't even a guaranteed 4-star. And in the pool, where the lowest was 3-star, he actually drew a few 2-stars. Could you believe it? Soon, under the lesson of blood, he finally realized what the buff of happiness and suffering together meant. Indeed, his luck would improve a little, but Once he made a mistake, the severity of the consequences would also increase substantially. Even if Sher's luck improved, it still didn't reach the 1% 5-star rate announced in the game. After it was judged as a failure, the system tacitly gave him a lot of 2 stars. Okay. Sher put down his phone. It seemed that the meaning of these buffs wasn't to let him be reckless, but to play it safe. If he was calm in the face of danger, he would be able to counter it. If he did things steadily, he would naturally be successful. If he remained cautious, he wouldn't lose everything. Sher didn't expect that he would be taught a lesson by these buffs one day. Thanks to the effect of these 3 powerful buffs, his solicitation operation was incredibly smooth. Those who were afraid of difficult challenges and didn't dare to fail were passionately dragged and kidnapped by the zombies and sent in one by one. Those who were weaker were directly served in the nightclub. Those who were stronger and wanted to resist were killed by Sher's axe. It was daunting but not dangerous. The performance had soared to 800 points in just half an hour. According to the momentum of this growth, it would be extremely difficult for the people behind to catch up. The first place was secured. Then, he heard screams coming from outside the castle. In the heavy footsteps of the zombies, another unlucky person was dragged in. Even if his hands and feet were already held down, that guy was still screaming in a crying voice. His voice was frighteningly loud. I didn't hit him. I really didn't hit him. The unlucky person struggled with all his might and screamed, I shoveled Kitten's feces. I made contributions to the amusement park. You can't do this to me. I want to see Kitten. Let me go. I want to see Kitten. The zombies next to him were still comforting him. Little brother, don't be afraid. As long as you've danced with us, we'll be good friends for life. Don't panic. It'll be over once you finish counting the stains on the wall. The more Sher listened, the more familiar the screams sounded. He took a closer look with the flashlight, but when he saw Yuan Zhao's pale face, he was stunned. Why is it you? Yuan Zhao saw that it was him and immediately became angry. I wanted to say, it must be you. In his rage, Xiao Gui struggled with all his might. Even the zombies who were rank 3 ascendant couldn't hold him down and shouted angrily, You even want to kill your big brother, you traitor! I'm shocked. Sher was stunned. I'm older than you, okay? Since when did you become my big brother? Moreover, you dared to be my big brother. Aren't you afraid that I'll jinx you to death? Sometimes he felt that he was a jinx to all kinds of good brothers. If it wasn't for old Lu's tough life, he would have been jinxed to death in the church in Laotang town. Hearing him say this, Yuan Zhao became even angrier. You actually didn't refute the words of a traitor. Young man, you're just inexperienced, making a fuss about nothing. So what if I'm a traitor? I've been a professional traitor since 400 years ago. I don't need you to tell me. Sher cursed in his heart, shook his head, and sighed. He waved his hand to signal the zombies to put him down, then casually handed over his feces fork. Forget it. Since you're here, help me. Help. Yuan Zhao was at a loss. He glanced at the spinning laser ball behind him and the old zombie who was twisting and turning on the stage with a steel pipe between his legs. He suddenly understood something and became furious. What kind of person do you think I am? Sher was already stunned by his strange way of thinking. He could only sigh and point behind the door. You just stand here, holding your feces fork. If there's a cough, if there's a challenger, just jump up and stab him. Yuan Zhao realized that he misunderstood. He was embarrassed, but also a little uneasy. What about the feces? You're still thinking about your feces at this time. Sher shook his head and snapped his fingers. Suddenly, 4 big zombies wearing little clothes jumped out from the group of zombies. They were Cui, Piao, and Li. You and you. Go shovel the feces. Finish it before sunset. After the 4 zombies nodded their heads, they danced to the music and left, leaving a dumbfounded Yuan Zhao standing in the same place. Could it be like this? Out of Huaishi's expectation, from the time they entered Yamatai City until now, the number of contestants who died in this city and lost their qualifications to participate in the competition should be close to 3,000 or even 4,000, other than fighting each other. There were even more people who died in the city at night because of a single misstep. In just one day and one night, at least half of the contestants were gone. If this was the preliminary selection, it was understandable. Even if the number of contestants was huge, but compared to the 7,000 contestants, it was just 1 out of 2. This lineup was probably not even the preliminary round. It was just a greeting, and they were eliminated. It was no wonder that they were thrown into the kitten paradise as a test for the host. At the same time, it could also give those unlucky challengers a chance to make a comeback. But with such a huge number of contestants, even if they came in batches, the entire kitten paradise was already overcrowded. Even if they knew that it was dangerous ahead, there was already a long queue in front of the 10 or so less difficult projects. There were even more people who did not dare to challenge the stage in exchange for the right to be revived, and did not have the ability to kill the host to inherit the progress of the strategy. They could only wander around the plaza, hesitating and stopping. It seemed that they had given up on their own. There were even those who did not even need the zombies to catch them. They ran in to indulge themselves. After drinking the special Calamity Ash Happy water that Huaishi gave them, the bitter wine went down their throats and their hearts ached. They died in the midst of the singing and dancing. For a moment, Huaishi was simply in awe. However, Huaishi still had a trick up her sleeve. Once the ascended people were turned into zombies, all that was left of them was an empty shell. However, the shell still retained some of the memories of when they entered the city. Why did they die? Where did they die? Where did they see something incredible? They were all asked by Huaishi and recorded in the Book of Destiny. In an instant, the map of Yamatai City was faintly about to be completed by him, and just at about 2 o'clock in the afternoon, when the performance competition was in full swing, he suddenly heard an ominous thunder coming from outside the castle. Then an endless amount of dark substance erupted like a volcano. In the rumbling sound of the wheels rolling forward, a few tyrannical laughter covered the entire kitten paradise. Thus, the tragic ravaging began. Chapter 228. Too slow, too slow. Amidst the tyrannical laughter, an unfamiliar hoarse voice exploded like thunder. Then another voice sneered. Allowing outsiders like you to set foot on this paradise is truly absurd. Since we have to clean it up, no matter what, why don't we do it? No matter what, you're just a bunch of trash. As the gate of the pitch-black castle in the middle of the square opened with a bang, a pitch-black carriage rolled out from within and rushed straight into the crowd. Under the iron hooves of the black warhorse, countless blood spurted out. It was as if a juicer had started to work, continuously spurting out scarlet juice. On top of the carriage, along with the shrill laughter, several illusory shadows flew down and floated in the air, choosing to devour people. Wherever they passed, all the challengers were left lying on the ground. Even the host who was hiding in the event was violently pulled into the air as a shadow flew past and casually thrown down, turning into a pile of mush. Huaishi peeked out one eye from the back window of the ghost castle in astonishment, but he was stunned on the spot. Those several translucent shadows were wrapped in solid darkness and bathed in blood. They were clearly carrying swords and crowns, looking as dignified and handsome as princes, but at this moment they were as ferocious as demons. They casually rampaged through the crowd, brutally slaughtering, turning the ascendants into corpses on the ground. Even if they wanted to escape under that strange speed, they still couldn't avoid it. One of the princes was dressed in gray, his face pale, driving the carriage back and forth in the crowd. Another prince had 8 dwarves around him, laughing while bathed in blood. One stepped on a pair of pitch-black crystal boots, trampling everything in front of him into mud. One had fish gills behind his ears and bulging eyes like a strange fish swallowing the ascendants whole. One prince had black hair and black eyes, his muscles bulging, waving a sword in his hand to take people's lives. Another prince had long hair like a snake, choosing to devour people. Finally, there was one who waved a raging fire, turning everything in his path into charcoal in the blink of an eye. The ascendants on the square suffered tragic casualties. Those who wanted to counterattack found that all their attacks landed on empty air passing through their bodies. The ferocious monster approached step by step, ravaging those who resisted to death in endless despair. However, the slaughter was still ongoing. It was getting more and more intense. In the blink of an eye, the amusement park turned into a real hell. Then, a tattered puppet appeared in front of the carriage. The kitten raised its head. Its patched face was dirty, but through its open mouth, it was difficult to see the figure hiding inside. Only a cold voice could be heard from inside. "I work during the day, and these are my guests," he said. "If you have any ideas, you can implement them through the agents you've hired instead of doing it yourself." The kitten said, "You guys broke the rules." The gray-clothed prince who was driving the carriage was stunned for a moment. He frowned and lowered his head to look at the tattered doll in front of him. As if he had heard a joke, he suddenly grinned and let out a hoarse laugh. "Rules." A whip lashed down from the carriage, leaving a whip mark on the kitten's leather sheath. In the flying dust and stains, the originally cute face was split into two by the scorch mark, and smoke rose from the scar. Immediately after, the prince with the dwarf stretched out his hand and lifted the kitten up, as if pulling at the kitten's neck. The prince grinned and told him word by word, "We are the rules." The black-haired prince who returned from the bloody battle held a sword and laughed sharply. He looked around as if he was bragging about his bravery in front of thousands of people, and happily announced, "We are the popularity. Look, isn't this the audience who came to watch us? Isn't this the performance we're offering?" But there was no audience here, only countless corpses lying quietly in the blood. The kitten didn't say anything, just waved its hand. Then, the mighty bell sounded from the depths of the amusement park. In an instant, the darkness shook and rolled back, as if time was flowing backward. An invisible force swept out from the castle in the center of the square, pulling the princes who were in the midst of killing, pulling them to the gate, letting them go back to where they should go. This again. The face of the gray-clothed prince who was driving the carriage was distorted. "Why don't you immediately go back to your own garbage dump like you?" With anger and unwillingness, he turned the carriage around and turned to the castle. But before leaving, he paused and suddenly turned back to ask, "By the way, I haven't seen your duck friend for a long time. Where did he go?" The kitten didn't say anything, but another prince sneered and said, "I remember there was a dog-headed man before, and his wife." "Ha ha 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 ha," added another, and all the princes laughed merrily and set out on their way home with pride and joy, casting malicious glances at him from the corners of their eyes. "Don't worry." Someone bent down and whispered in his ear, "One day you will be like them, and one day this place will belong to us." The gate of the castle closed with a loud bang. In the dead silence, the kitten didn't say anything, only remained silent, lowering his head to look at the reflection in the blood. It was as if he could see countless years ago the beautiful world under the blazing sun, countless smiling and joyful faces, countless happy expressions, and countless gentle dreams. Unfortunately, those things were no longer there. So, the quiet pool of blood rippled under the trampling. The illusion of the past was gone. Only in the darkness under the doll cover, there was a cold sneer. "Look, my friends. In the past, we were so happy and carefree. The sudden massacre had basically wiped out more than half of the challengers in the square, but they were already used to the strange changes in Yamatai City. The Ascendants didn't take this matter to heart, only treating it as a test that would happen. The competition was still going on. It was even more intense than the competition in the morning. The battles were constantly on display. Even the losers who were originally loafing in the square and unwilling to challenge after the bloodbath were afraid that they would be mowed down again if they delayed. Before the last chance, they were all working extremely hard. When the day was over, there were actually more than 400 ascendants who had successfully cleared the amusement park, fighting for the right to return to the competition in the revival round, and were able to walk out of the amusement park. And there were a total of 11 hosts who were killed by the ascendants who challenged the stage, snatching the progress of the challenge. They didn't even have the chance to participate in the revival round, directly leaving with hatred. When the camera of the organizing committee had just finished broadcasting the bloody battle in Akihabara, it finally turned back to check the rankings of the competition. All the audience who had already predicted it and entered the state of idling saw Huaishur's name at the top of the list. Ghost Castle, Huaishur, 1,077 people. And Li Jian, who was originally chasing closely, was still far behind in the progress after slashing his hands until they were numb. He was only 701 people in second place. And the sick warrior who was originally in third place was squeezed to fourth place by another ascendant who had killed the host and inherited the progress. No one expected that at the last moment, the ascendant who had been hiding for the whole day would suddenly burst out, using a well-designed backstab to kill the original host in front of the light of dawn. As the last ascendant left the stage, the gates of the amusement park closed with a bang. The kitten paradise was closed. But for the hosts, the real highlight of the show had just begun. Why did they persist for the whole day? Could it be that they came to Ingzhou to work for free? What a joke! People die for wealth, and birds die for food. The people here weren't red scarves who took pleasure in helping others. Wasn't the reason why they worked so hard? Wasn't it for the reward of completing the mission? There was no need for the ascendants to urge them. Except for the top 3, all the hosts who had completed the mission had a light floating in front of them, directly entering the hands of the hosts. Everyone had one, and even Yuan Zhao had one. But Yuan Zhao looked at the dung fork in his hand that was emitting a golden light, and his whole body began to feel uncomfortable. That's it. He was dumbfounded as he squeezed the fork in his hand. I shoveled your shit for the whole day, and you just gave me your dung fork? The kitten just raised its hand and waved, and the dung fork in Yuan Zhao's hand shook violently. Then the rust and stains on it quickly peeled off, and in the end, a solemn outline of a trident appeared. And as Yuan Zhao waved it, there was a faint hurricane wrapped around it, doubling its speed. Yuan Zhao's sacred mark was originally the second stage of the Pegasus, and speed was its strongest point. With the help of this hurricane, its speed increased again. Under a full thrust, even Huaishur couldn't see it clearly, and the hurricane could also turn into an invisible sharp blade. As long as it was injected with origin substance, it could be shot out from the trident at any time. It could still penetrate the blue stone on the ground from dozens of meters away and chisel a deep hole in the soil. Feeling its power, how could Yuan Zhao not know that he had picked up a big bargain? This was definitely an A-rank or above-border relic. It was a precious weapon that was hard to buy in the present world. It was more than 100,000 times better than the pure white weapon he was originally good at using. With this gun in hand, he could even fight a third-rank expert. But even though this border relic was powerful, there was one thing that wasn't good about it. The hurricane it raised always had a fishy smell that wouldn't disperse. After smelling it for a long time, it would make people's vision black, and their legs weak. Moreover, it couldn't distinguish between friend and foe. Yuan Zhao's heart twitched. How was he going to take this gun out in the future? Even if he wasn't afraid of people saying that Yuan Zhao was here again, was he going to wear a nose plug in a fight? But this was his problem. Young people always had worries, especially Yuan Zhao. He had even more worries. Huaishir smiled and patted the dog's head. Then, following the kitten's signal, he followed him into the building. Next was the time for the top 3 to draw their prizes. And that was the end of the live broadcast. In front of the screen, the Harkin calmly drank a mouthful of tea. Then he thought worriedly, if that little brat Yuan Zhao knew that the scene of him pooping feces was broadcasted all over the world, and that someone had even edited it at the speed of light and uploaded it with a lot of views, he couldn't even think about it anymore. It was simply a tragedy, and in order to prevent that brat from taking things too hard and hanging himself in front of his house, he should tell his subordinates not to tell him, right? But when Yuan Zhao found out that he was the world-famous pooping young man, what kind of expression would he have? I'm really looking forward to it. Chapter 229. Oh my God! Although he had entered the building, Huaishir still had to wait in the corridor outside the door for a while. There were 2 people in front of him, the second place, Hupa, and the last descender from Persia. The first person to enter was the Persian. Soon, he walked out with light steps, nodded slightly to the 2 people, and left. Hupa, who had been staring at Huaishir for a long time, also snorted coldly, got up, and walked into the room. This time, it took a long time. About half an hour later, Hupa pushed the door open and came out, carrying a sword pouch that had never been there before. It was unknown what kind of weapon was inside. He pointed at the door behind him to Huaishir and said expressionlessly, "It's your turn, first place." "Aya, I haven't studied well since I was young. It's embarrassing for you to praise me like this." Huaishir scratched his head and walked into the room with a happy smile. But when they brushed past each other, she could feel Amber's gaze faintly glancing at the base of her neck. Why does this girl only think about helping people behead people every day? Or is the advanced education of the Social Security Bureau not enough? I'll mention it to Big Cousin later. He walked into the room and closed the door. He sat on the chair. Kitten was still sitting behind his desk, smoking a cigarette. One of his arms stretched out from the mouth of the doll cover and flicked the ash. When he saw Huaishir come in, he didn't hurry to speak. He just smoked silently, as if he was thinking about something. Huaishir didn't say anything. He just sat on the chair and waited for him to speak first. "To be honest, you did a good job. It was like an art. You didn't let me down." After a long time, Kitten said, "The performance of those scumbags, hosts combined, wasn't as high as yours. When they wake up tomorrow, they'll be embarrassed, right?" Huaishir nodded modestly. "It's all because you taught me well." Business flattery was a necessary part of social communication. People flattering each other wouldn't lose anything, and it could even improve their mood. Why not? Kitten just smiled and didn't say anything. She reached out and opened the drawer next to her. Huaishir's eyes widened. The highlight of the show was here. Then, the kitten took out 3 things from the drawer and put them on the table. There was a dusty ring, an envelope, and a thin iron chain that looked quite old. The 3 items were nothing special. "According to what you said, the task has been completed, and this is the reward you deserve. Although there were some accidents that no one wanted to see, this did not affect the final result. You are the first, and I will take out 3 of the best collections of Kitten Paradise over the years for you to choose from." The kitten said, "You can do whatever you want, but I won't explain anything to you. No matter what you choose, these 3 items have the same value to you." 1 out of 3? Huaishir was stunned. He couldn't help but move closer and looked down at the things on the table. One was a gray iron ring. The other was an envelope that could be seen everywhere. It was thin as if there was some kind of card in it. And the last one was a very ordinary-looking thin iron chain. There was no dazzling light, nor was there any magical scene. It was like a product that was sold at a discount in a second-hand shop. Weisher raised his head in surprise. "Big brother, you really don't want to give me a hint?" Kitten didn't say anything. She just shrugged and calmly looked at his conflicted expression. Weisher reached out and touched the ring. In an instant, he felt the origin substance in his body boil and surge. He withdrew his finger and touched the envelope. This time, the Book of Destiny faintly transmitted some kind of fluctuation. Finally, he touched the iron piece and found that his sole ability, the Hand of Confinement, had activated on its own and responded to it from a distance. Now, he could conclude that these 3 items were definitely not ordinary goods. The ring was very compatible with his origin substance, the envelope had a certain response to the Book of Destiny, and the thin iron chain directly responded to his soul ability. This feeling was very strange. When he picked up any one of the items, the power represented by the other 2 items would come with a sense of emptiness. Kitten told him that choosing any one of them would be worth it, but now Weisher felt that choosing any one of them would cause him to lose 2 equally precious opportunities. He sank into a long period of thought, making a difficult choice. His expression changed, touching this, touching that, thinking that he could only choose one. His heart was about to break. In the long period of choosing, he hesitated and hesitated. After almost using up all of his determination in this life, he gritted his teeth and picked up the ring on the far left. He made up his mind. Immediately after, a familiar voice sounded in his ear. It sighed with disappointment. "Idiot, where did your I want them all attitude go?" Weisher was stunned. "Crow, you followed me in?" He opened his eyes wide in astonishment. I didn't. I'm still at home. Don't talk nonsense." On the page of the Book of Destiny, lines of words appeared. "If it weren't for the fact that you were being teased so miserably, Big Sister wouldn't even be bothered to say anything. Be careful. Even if there is a system panel, this isn't a game. This guy definitely followed me in quietly, right?" Weisher thought suspiciously, but no matter how he probed, Crow didn't reply. He slowly raised his head, pressed the ring, and looked at Kitten in front of him. He frowned. "Are these 3 items really the original rewards for first place?" Kitten seemed puzzled. "Why do you say that? If one item is compatible with me, it can be said to be a coincidence. But 3 items are useful to me at the same time. This can't be explained by coincidence, right? Maybe it's because I have a rich collection." Kitten laughed softly. "What are the rewards I gave you not to your liking? I took out 2 extra items for you to choose from." Weisher was silent. "What do you want?" "You already know what I want, but what are you going to get from me?" Weisher asked bluntly. "You already know what I want, but what are you going to get from me? If I'm not wrong, your position is already equivalent to the leader of a large group, right? In the world of Deep Level 4, you can stir up trouble and do whatever you want. What do you need from an outsider like me? It's very simple. Why, sure. As long as you are willing, I can give you these 3 things," he said. "As long as you are willing to accept another task from me." Weisher was silent for a long time and asked, "What task?" As long as he could do it, he intended to fight for it. These 3 things were too important to him. He didn't have much room to refuse. "I need someone to help me clean up," Kitten said bluntly. "Don't be afraid. Thanks to your friend, the cat litter has been shoveled. I mean the entire kitten paradise. Don't you think it's a little crowded? Maybe it's a good thing to make it more spacious." Weisher was stunned for a moment. After a moment of silence, he had a flash of inspiration. He was shocked. He stared at the darkness under the doll cover in front of him in disbelief. "You want me to help you kill those princes?" Kitten didn't refute, didn't explain, and didn't correct him. He just looked at him quietly, waiting for his reply. "I can't do it." Huaisher shook his head and refused. Didn't he see those princes? Even if he didn't know their true strength, he knew that he couldn't fight against them just by looking at their tyrannical appearance and the strength they displayed. Maybe a level 4 sublimator could solve it, but it was definitely not something he could fight against. "Don't worry. Since I have chosen you, I have full confidence in you," Little Cat calmly said. "In the current Yamatai city, it can be said that only you can complete this mission." "Why?" Kitten suddenly laughed softly and looked at Huaisher. "I wasn't sure at first, but now it seems you are a celestial genealogy, right?" Huaisher was silent. He lowered his head and looked at the envelope on the table. He raised his eyebrows slightly. "So, this reward was used to test him?" Celestial genealogy sublimators have one advantage. They generally have the ability to adapt to the abyss. Other than the sublimator part, they can basically be regarded as half an abyss creature. Kitten slowly explained, "And you are especially special. You can be regarded as half an abyss creature. The reason why the Ghost Castle recognizes you is because of this. So, as long as you have my authorization, you can freely enter most of the places in Kitten Paradise. You can complete things that other sublimators can't. This is the first point. The second point, of course, it's because you can fight." Kitten said matter-of-factly, "Looking at your murderous and perverted appearance, I know that you are the talent I need. If you solidify in the future, you will definitely be an incredible demon from hell, letting you do things. I'm relieved." Huaisher's face was tangled. He didn't know how to explain. He could only ask, "Anything else?" "This is the third most important point. I can't do it myself because there is an unspoken rule in this amusement park. Only princes can defeat princes. You understand?" Kitten sighed. "I can kill them, but they will be reborn from their lounge the next day, just like they can't kill me. Only when they are defeated by other princes will their popularity be taken away, and they will be removed from this amusement park." "What the hell?" Huaisher was stunned. "Only princes can defeat princes? Then you should go and find princes. Why are you looking for me? Do I look like the kind of rich second generation whose parents are powerful and influential? That's too shallow. Is it enough for the so-called prince to have a piece of land at home?" Kitten sneered, looked at him carefully, and suddenly asked, "Do you have long magic hair?" Huaisher was stunned and subconsciously pressed the ponytail behind his head. The long hair of a mountain ghost. It couldn't be cut. Was this considered long magic hair? Kitten asked again, "Do you have magic hands?" He lowered his head and looked at his hands. The hand of restraint, was it considered magic? Kitten nodded, and then continued to ask, "Can small animals talk to you?" "There was a crow that secretly called me just now. Does that count? Have you been poisoned?" Thinking about it carefully, it was a common occurrence. Was he poisoned all over now? Cursed? Kidnapped? Enslaved? Kitten asked a series of questions. What the hell was that? Huaisher seemed to be able to answer every question. Huaisher was speechless. Finally, the most important thing, Kitten asked solemnly, "Does everyone think that every time your trouble is solved, it is because of the appearance of a beautiful young lady?" Huaisher was already stunned. It seemed that everything was right. Therefore, Kitten laughed, clapped her hands, pointed at his face, and exclaimed in surprise, "Oh my God, you are a prince!" Chapter 230. Half an hour later, Huaisher pushed open the door and walked into an abandoned theater. Below the stage, Two sublimators who were waiting there raised their eyes. They were not surprised to see him coming in. Instead, they seemed to have expected it. Li Jianhu asked directly, "You agreed to?" "Yeah, the same as you." Huaisheng found a clean seat and sat down without saying anything. Now it seemed that Kitten did not place all her hopes on him. Other than Huaisheng, he had already prepared a plan B in advance. If he guessed correctly, Li Jianhu and the young Persian man agreed earlier than him. However, there were advantages to having 3 people. At least, he did not have to go into the tiger's den alone. Not to mention the Persian sublimator, he could rest assured with Li Jianhu's skills. Originally, he planned to pull Yuan Zhao, the poor child, to do evil with him. But now, it seemed that it was better to let him sleep with his precious manure fork. Huaisheng and Li Jianhu were old friends who had snatched kills and achievements. Not to mention, they were both from the Orchard Gym. Among the Big Four, they could be considered as classmates and partners. Naturally, they knew each other well. After nodding, he looked at the Persian man not far away. "How should I address you?" "Ansali. Just call me Ansali." Although his face was full of stubble, his voice did not sound old. It was just that he was dressed maturely and had a burly body, which made people misunderstand his age. He was an uncle in his 30s. After introducing himself, Ansali just raised his wrist and showed the pendant hanging from his bracelet, the spreading eagle, and the old man's badge. Huaisheng was stunned for a moment and immediately understood his origin. It was indeed the Persian pedigree. No, strictly speaking, it should be the Zoroastrian pedigree. Although it could not be compared to the huge pedigrees such as Xia and Rome, it was still a huge pedigree with a deep foundation. According to Huaisheng's knowledge, there were a total of 5 sublimation routes in the pedigree, including 2 sects and 3 boundaries. A few hundred years ago, they even had a natural enemy. They could be said to have a deep foundation. Needless to say, the great mystic ritual, "Thus spake Zarathustra," that shrouded the entire realm was built by the creators using part of the Zoroastrian genealogy as the cornerstone. However, after experiencing a great change, the Persian lineage rarely showed itself in public. Most of the members hid in the borders of the lineage, and they rarely showed themselves. They were like the legendary hidden sects, with all kinds of sacred marks and powers that were quite mysterious. In any case, they were companions who were going to do the dirty work together. Everyone exchanged information with each other and secretly weighed the weight in their hearts. They all felt that each other's ideas were prickly and not easy to deal with. Therefore, they all smiled amiably on their faces. After getting familiar with each other, Little Cat walked in from outside the door. Standing on the stage, she lowered her head and looked at her hired thugs. "In a few hours, it will be the darkest time of the night at Yamatai. Are you all ready?" After getting a reply from the 3, Kitten nodded. He dragged his leather bag and sat down on a dirty stool on the stage and lit a cigarette. "According to the original rules, I am in charge during the day, and they are in charge at night. But today, they broke the rules and went out during the day. So they have to go back to the lounge to sleep at midnight. As long as you are careful, there won't be any trouble." As he said that, he gave a few pieces of paper to them. "The specific plan is here. When the time comes, Huaisheng will be in charge. Inside, Hupa and Ansali will assist from the side. If there is anything you don't understand, you can ask directly. If there is anything you are not willing to do, you can also express it directly here. It will save you the trouble of waking up those guys and getting killed by a slap." Kitten's plan was simple. Once the time was up, he would use his authority to send them directly to the castle where the princes were sleeping. Everyone would quietly enter the village and not shoot. First, they would secretly take care of the few leaders who were hired by the princes. Then, Huaishur would follow Kitten's method and take care of the sleeping princes one by one. Then it would be done. It was easy to say, but it wasn't hard to do. Everyone had known each other for many years and knew each other well. Kitten hardened his heart and decided to be a traitor. Not only did he print out a map of the castle for each of them, he even gave each of them a few keys. He even taught them the weaknesses and lifelines of the princes. But Huaishur still didn't understand why Kitten had so much confidence in him. After seeing the might of the princes during the day, he didn't think he could match up to them. Even if he broke through the heavens, he was only a level 2 sublimator. Moreover, it hadn't even been 2 months since he advanced. Even with Hupua and Ansali's help, if he was exposed, he would only be sending himself to the doorstep. Today is different from the past. Times have changed, little brat. Kitten smoked his cigarette and said calmly, no matter how noble we used to be, now we are just lonely ghosts relying on this paradise to survive. After losing our original faces, we can only exist in hell with such an ugly appearance. Is such a thing worth being afraid of? To some extent, we are all part of the mechanism of Kitten Paradise, drowned people relying on this broken boat to survive. It's just that they have been lost for too long, forgotten too much, and fallen too quickly. If they die in your hands, it might be a kind of release for them. Huaishur wanted to say something, but stopped. In fact, if I die in their hands, I should be quite relieved. At least I can guarantee a faster death. Don't worry, Kitten said. To outsiders, what the princes can embody is naturally a kind of great power that the entire Kitten Paradise has. But internally, this power may not be of much use. Before tomorrow, you are still the employees of Kitten Paradise, and you can be somewhat immune to their suppression. At this point, Kitten took a deep look at Huaishur, and some words were not said in public. Huaishur understood, tacitly. He was a celestial genealogy, which was equivalent to having an abyss account. For the mechanism of Kitten Paradise, it was naturally different from other ascenders. This was the good thing about being on the same side. They were all working, but he had a formal establishment, and others could only be contract workers for labor dispatch. Even at the end of the year, his share was much bigger than the others. If you cannot wake them up and let them die peacefully in their dreams, then everything will be over. If there is a flaw in the plan, you don't have to worry too much. Kitten said, when you officially reveal your qualifications to challenge them, it will be a decisive battle of popularity between the princes. The paradise will never interfere with such an internal cycle and replacement, and will only be happy to see it. At that time, if they want to kill you, they can only rely on their own existing strength. Some of them are strong and some are weak, and it depends on your luck at that time. Okay, Huaishur sighed. Wealth was found in danger, and there was no point in talking about danger now. Anyway, if he failed, Kitten would not gain anything. It was said that 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. No matter how he thought about it, he could not beat the 7 princes together. They were all grasshoppers on the same rope, so it was better not to scheme against each other. Seeing that Huaishur had made up his mind, Kitten was quite satisfied. He just flicked the ash of the cigarette, and Huaishur felt that there was one more thing in his pocket, and there was a hallucinatory whisper in his ear. I'll give you this first. It's a deposit. Huaishur reached out with his hand, only to discover that the thin chain that had fallen into his pocket was actually the thin chain. Before he could react, the thin chain disintegrated on its own as soon as it came into contact with Huaishur's origin substance, turning into a strand of origin substance that burrowed into Huaishur's soul. Huaishur's body involuntarily trembled, and the chair he was sitting on let out a sharp sound. Hupua and Ansali looked over and found that Huaishur hadn't moved at all. They just assumed that he had changed his posture, but Immediately afterwards, they saw two intense rays of light shoot out from his eyes. It was as if 200-watt light bulbs had been installed behind his eyeballs. Shiny. That was the terrifying light that would be emitted when countless origin substances collided. Under Huaishur's jacket, the Stigmata Mountain ghost awakened on its own without him needing to activate it. A pale, white flame lit up from the crack in his chest, just like lava. That was the alchemy fire in the cauldron. At the center of the flames was the appearance of the thin iron chain. It was like a pendant. After Huaishur touched the thin iron chain, he realized that it had the same effect as his confinement hand. It had been transformed from pure origin substance through some method. Its completion rate was 10 times, no, 100 times higher than his own. Once it was no longer suppressed by the kitten, it was awakened by the soul power of the same origin. The iron chain seemed to come alive as it pounced into Huaishur's soul, revealing its original appearance. It rapidly expanded. Within the illusory consciousness, a vertical chain appeared. The top and bottom of the chain couldn't be seen, as if it had already extended to the end that his consciousness could sense. As the chain continued to expand, countless intricate structures formed from pure origin substance began to appear in front of Huaishur. With just a slight movement, the countless links of the chain began to grind against each other, emitting earth-shattering sounds of thunder. Sparks flew in all directions like lightning. Immediately afterwards, it finally found something that resonated with itself, and it began to shrink. All of the abnormalities disappeared without a trace. It was as if two powerful currents had merged into one, and it merged into Huaishur's soul without any resistance, becoming a part of his confinement hand. Merged into the sorrowful rope, Huaishur ignored the stunned expressions of the other two. He reached out with his hand, and the sorrowful rope shot out from his fingertips. However, it was no longer made from iron threads. Instead, it had transformed into a chain shrouded in faint black smoke. Sparks constantly shot out from the chain's fingertips. Metal clashed against metal, but no ear-piercing sounds could be heard. It was as if even sound had been suppressed by the chain. Huaishur's eyes widened in disbelief. The origin substance that he had split off had actually become a genuine border relic. Chapter 231. The transformation happened in an instant, and Huaishur didn't even have time to react. Perhaps it was because the chains were intrinsically compatible with the sorrowful rope. Originally, one was made of metal, while the other was made of origin substance. Now it was as if her soul had finally found a physical body. The two of them combined into one, and Huaishur had never imagined such a thing would happen. This feeling was as if a part of himself had become a relic from the border. Now, as long as he pointed at a target, the iron chain would fly out on its own and transform between reality and illusion, forcefully connecting the two objects into one. If Huaishur injected origin substance into it, it would even have the effect of suppressing the sacred mark. This equipment was practically tailor-made for him. It could be said that this was the only one, and Huaishur felt that it wasn't a loss. As if he had just obtained a new toy, Huaishur couldn't wait to try it out. The sorrowful rope transformed in the air as if it was his own arm. One moment it would bind a tortoiseshell, another moment it would bind a chestnut rope. By the time he reacted, Hoopa was already looking at him with disdain, as if he was looking at something dirty. However, Ensali's eyebrows were raised, his expression one of surprise and admiration. He secretly gave Huaishur a thumbs up, as if saying, "Little brother, you're pretty good too." Huaishur coughed awkwardly and put away the chain, pretending that nothing had happened. Only when time slowly passed did Kitten finally raise his head. "Are you ready?" he said. "You should head out now." Bang! It was as if a bubble had burst. As Kitten waved his hand, Huaisher's vision suddenly blurred. In the next moment, he had already fallen from the sky and was in midair in the castle's main hall. He didn't have time to scream. He forcefully turned around in midair and looked around, dumbfounded. What the hell was Kitten thinking? This was completely falling into a wolf's den. At this moment, there were a total of 11 ascendants in the castle's main hall. He had still underestimated how stingy the princes were. They weren't even willing to give their subordinates a single room to stay in, and actually made them sleep on the floor in the castle's main hall. The muffled sound of something breaking through the air suddenly rang out. The dozen or so ascendants raised their heads in confusion. Immediately after, they saw 3 people falling from the sky. Before they could react, Ansari, who was at the back, strangely paused in the air. His robes swelled up, and he floated up like a balloon. In the air, he raised one hand and held an old oil lamp. He reached out and rubbed it, and a wisp of dark smoke emerged from it. The more the wisp of darkness went down, the more it expanded, as if it was boiling. It spread violently and instantly enveloped the entire hall. Wherever it passed, not only light, but even sound was instantly devoured. Strangely, however, it was as if nothing had happened in the darkness. Even the origin substance fluctuations of the 11 ascendants didn't change in the slightest. Huaisher saw it clearly, and the corners of his eyes twitched. A stigmata relic. It was definitely a Persian stigmata relic. According to his guess, the stigmata relic was probably a weapon formed by one of the ranks of the evil sex path of sublimation. The moment it appeared, endless darkness spewed out from the oil lamp, turning this place into a dark kingdom at the end of the beginning era, completely isolating the inside from the outside. No wonder Kitten wanted him to be her assistant. This ability to turn off the light and beat people up in an instant was too convenient. In an instant, Huaisher landed on the ground. Immediately after, in the deathly silence of the darkness, a crisp, cracking sound could be heard from Huaisher's hand. As he turned around, it was pressed against the forehead of a sublime, who was sitting on the ground sharpening a blade. The trigger was pulled. A ray of fierce light, accompanied by red iron sand, spewed out from the barrel of the gun. But immediately after, it was swallowed by the darkness like a fleeting epiphyllum. Blood splattered. Huaisher stepped forward, pulled the bolt again, and aimed at the source of the wind beside him. He pulled the trigger again, and in the midst of the violent tremor, another ray of iron spewed out. Immediately, a wisp of warmth fell on Huaisher's face. In an instant, 2 of them were killed. In the end, the ascendants recruited by the princes were not incompetent in the face of the enemy's attack. They did not give Huaisher time to calmly reload. An iron hammer had already smashed down with lightning. Even the darkness spat out by the oil lamp could not be covered by the loud noise. A sizzling sound could be heard faintly breaking through the darkness. Through the thick darkness, a ray of lightning could be faintly seen, but it was already piercing to the eyes. If one was really hit by this thing, they would probably turn into ashes in an instant. Huaisher raised his hand, and the chain of sorrow was instantly thrown out. It caught on the ceiling and pulled him up into the air. The moment he flew past the dull thunder, the chain loosened from the ceiling and rolled back toward the iron hammer. The iron hammer was bound by layers of darkness, and the lightning quickly dissipated, swallowed, and worn down. In the end, the iron hammer fell silently to the ground, no longer having a trace of magic. Immediately after, in the midst of countless sparks, the iron chain contracted, and the heavy sorrow that was like a burial was placed in the chest of the attacker. It suddenly erupted. Caught off guard, the attacker only felt his eyes turn red. He did not know what sorrowful past he thought of, but he actually let out a long sigh and 2 streams of tears flowed down. Huaishur brushed past him. Thus his tears and sorrow flew into the air together and fell to the ground together with his head. This way of dying sounded extremely artistic, and it was enviable. Huaishur hurried forward, distinguishing the footsteps and the sound of the wind around him. But the darkness swallowed everything, and he could not even find any signs to distinguish between friend and foe, until Huaishur waved his hand, and a grass seed halo of fear and halo of pestilence spread out in all directions. In midair, Ansali seemed to have sensed something and raised his eyebrows slightly. Ignoring the strong corrosiveness of the darkness, the mountain ghost's sacred mark expanded forcefully like grass roots growing under a rock. It actually opened up a gap in Ansali's lamp of darkness. Immediately after, a stunned face appeared in front of Huaishur. Huaishur raised his gun and pulled the trigger. A corpse was sent flying backward. A trace of hidden killing intent suddenly appeared behind him, and a blurry figure suddenly emerged from the darkness. In midair, she swung her long saber horizontally and aimed it at Huaishur's neck. Tisk! In Huaishur's hand, the spear of compassion was raised and blocked the blade. The drummers burst out with force, and the vibration was transmitted up the spear blade and down the long saber to the attacker's fingertips. Tell her, "Big sister, I'm on your side." In the darkness, the slender and thin figure disappeared silently, leaving behind an illusory tisk sound. Huaishur sighed helplessly, and then withdrew the gun pointed at her. It was a pity. In any case, nothing could be seen in the darkness. It was normal to accidentally kill someone, right? He pulled the trigger and killed the sublimator next to him, who had started hacking randomly after he couldn't see anything. Then he hung the shotgun on his back, swung the axe, and did a jump chop, and then another jump chop. It could only be said that it was a pity that he could only store 4 large-caliber bullets at a time. Then he felt a hurricane coming from behind him. The Dark Kingdom was in turmoil. With the outbreak of the hurricane, violent explosions occurred one after another. Blazing light emerged from the depths of the Dark Kingdom, tearing the darkness apart layer by layer. In the light, the sublimator suddenly rose into the air like a burning flame. As he sensed that his companions were dying one by one, even a fool knew that something was wrong. Someone had come to steal their home. The most important thing was not to wipe out the enemy, but to send out the alarm as soon as possible. After hardening his heart, he completely gave up on rescuing his companions. A giant wolf with dazzling light all over its body broke through the darkness. It suddenly retracted its origin substance and opened its mouth to roar. Something was wrong. Huaishur's eyes widened. A chain with sparks and black smoke had already flown out and bound the wolf's mouth. It suddenly contracted and forcibly closed the giant wolf's open mouth. Immediately after, Rygian Amber suddenly appeared in midair, as if he had appeared in a flash. The 2 long blades in his hands were covered in frost and flames as he slashed downwards. In an instant, 16 crisscrossing saber lights gathered in one place. Blazing blood spurted out. The Dark Kingdom surged and once again swallowed him. Huaishur raised his axe and suddenly chopped down. The wolf's head fell to the ground. The sacred mark that appeared collapsed. Even the sublimator's body suddenly shook. Blood spurted out from all the pores on its body. Huaishur's other hand pierced through it. Then it turned into a white light and dissipated. Jin Shao Bian fell to the ground. Soon, the Dark Kingdom dissipated. The ground was a mess. The few people looked at each other and let out a long breath. The lingering fear had not disappeared. They were just a little bit away from sounding the alarm. As Ansali rubbed the oil lamp again, a plume of black smoke flew out from the oil lamp and turned into several figures that scattered around. They were still emitting the energy waves of the ascendants, as if nothing had happened. The origin substance needed to maintain this sacred mark relic was obviously not cheap. After taking 2 breaths, he took out a small snuff bottle from his pocket and carefully picked out a fingernail-sized portion. After fiercely rubbing it twice, he came back to his senses, and his face became rosy. This kind of medicine that could restore origin substance mostly stimulated the brain. The side effects were not shallow. The 1,000-year incense that could really restore origin substance was priceless. 1 mouthful was enough to completely restore a 4th order sublimator. Using it on sublimators below the 4th order was a complete waste. After recovering a little, he rubbed the oil lamp again. Soon, a wisp of smoke wrapped around their bodies and covered them. Whether it was the sound of footsteps or any other abnormalities, they were all covered up. Judge Jean, you guys split it among yourselves. I don't need it. He took the initiative to say, but we need to hurry up. I can't hold on for too long. Weisher and Ridgian Amber looked at each other and found that the other had an I want it all expression. They could only curl their lips and split it 50-50. This woman was covered in border relics. She was already so rich, but she still wanted to fight with him over these bits and pieces. Sure enough, the richer you are, the stingier you are. After splitting the loot, it was time to get to work. Weisher took out the key and walked in front. You're tuning in to the Mystic Fist YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.